So today we're going to talk about Chapter 2, and that is fractions. In Chapter 1, we did some of the basic concepts with adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing whole numbers, and now we're going to move on to fractions. This can be a little bit more challenging, so I will spend some time in our WIMBA session covering some of the problems and going over. But for today, what I'm going to do is just highlight some of the principles from the chapter, and then I'll explain to you what we'll go over in more detail in the WIMBA sessions. What is a fraction? Well, a fraction is a number, a part of a whole. So you're going to read this as 2/3 or 2 divided by 3. This is a fraction. Basically what this means is if I would take a circle and divide it in 3 parts, 2 of them of the 3 are filled in. So 3 represents how many parts of the whole, 2 represents how many of the parts. There are 3 different types of fractions. The first one I did here for you is a proper. And you're going to hear the term proper fraction throughout the chapter. You're also going to hear improper. And that would be if you have your number on the top, which is your numerator, larger than your denominator, which is on the bottom. So a proper fraction, your numerator is smaller, which kind of makes sense when you look at our diagram here, of the whole. An improper fraction, your numerator on the top is larger than your denominator. And then one last type that we'll have, it's called a mixed. And that is if you have a whole number such as 1 and 2/3, and that represents a mixed fraction. So these are the 3 types. You will, as you go through your problems, you'll hear them reference improper, mixed, or proper fractions. So this is what the 3 equal. If you're going to convert, and there is a section in the chapter that talks about converting, and you have an improper fraction such as 8/3, and you want to convert it to a mixed. What you do, this basically is read as 8 divided by 3. So if I take 8 divided by 3, and I just work out my division, this can go in 2 times, which is 6. I have a remainder of 2. So this number as a mixed fraction is 2, and then my remainder, which is 2 and 2/3. So 2 and 2/3 is equal to 8/3. It's the same thing. If you want to convert a mixed number, let's take 2 and 3/4, and we want to convert this to an improper fraction, and I'll talk about later why this is important. What you do is you take 4 and you multiply it by 2, which is 8. You add 3, which is 11, and that gives us our top number. 4 times 2 is 8, plus 3 is 11, over, and we keep the same denominator, over 4. So 2 and 3/4 is equal to 11/4. It's the same thing. I just converted the numbers between the different types of fractions. Okay, now I'm going to switch over to another concept that is reducing. This is a major part of your chapter. There are several pages that are devoted to reducing. I'm going to highlight some of the concepts here. I'd like to spend the next WIMBA session going over and practicing out problems. So I may show you one here in this video. We will work through several when we go through the WIMBA sessions. I'd also recommend you read through the text because it does have some exercises that it works out. And if you have any questions as far as reducing, I certainly want to open that up, and we'll kind of go over that more in the WIMBA session. So if you turn to page 37, there is some rules as far as finding out how to reduce a fraction. So I would recommend reading through those rules. There are several different concepts you can do. When I say reducing a fraction, if a fraction is shown as 4/6, this is not the lowest terms that you can show it in. In order to do that, we need to bring it down into smaller numbers. So in order to do that, we find what number can go in both the top and the bottom, and in this case it's 2. So if I divide 4 divided by 2, I get 2. If I divide it by 6 divided by 2, I get 3. So 4/6 is the same thing as 2/3. I've just reduced it down to 2/3. Now how did I know to divide by 2? I can look at the 2 numbers and I can take an educated guess that it's 2. So one way that you can reduce is trial and error. So if you're comfortable just guessing numbers that go into the 2, you can do that. It has to be the same number that can go into both the top and the bottom, and that's how you can, one way to reduce. There's also different methods that the book goes over. So one is to find the least common multiple, and that is what number can go into both the top and the bottom. So if I have a number such as 30 over 55. I need to find what's the least number that can go into both 30 and 55 to bring it down. So if I take some guesses, let's say I say 3. Well, 3 can go into 30, but 3 can't go into 55. 4 can't go into 30, nor can it go into 55. Let me try 5. So let me divide both of these by 5, and 5 can go into 30 6 times, 5 can go into 55 11 times. So I can reduce this by dividing both the top and the bottom by 5, and I can reduce this to 6/11. So how did I figure that? Well, I just kind of went through some scenarios and guessed some numbers. Okay, there are two methods that if you have a large number, you might want to take a look at. One is the divisor method. And basically you're going to divide out the fraction to try to find what is the least number that can go into both the top and the bottom. The rules are that if you start working out your divisions, and I would take a look at the example in the book, if you divide it all the way out and you get a 0, that last number you're dividing by is your answer of what you can use. I'll give you an example though where it turns out into 1. If you're doing the divisor method and your answer ends up with a 1, that means that the number is the least that can be done and it can't be reduced any further. So if we have 175 over 232, and I ask you, can this number be reduced? So can a number go into both the top and the bottom so that I can reduce this number down? So what I do is I take 232 and I divide it by 175. So I know this can go one time. If I put 175, subtract it out, I should get 57. Now I'm going to take 57 and divide that into 175. If I work through this, it should go 3 times, and I get a remainder of 4. Now I'm going to divide 4 into 57. This can go in 14 times, and my end result is a 1. At this point, because my answer is a 1, the divisor method tells me that this number cannot be reduced. So this is the least, this is the most reduced part of this fraction, so I will not be able to reduce this. So I gave you the example of dividing it out and getting 1. I would take a look at the book though, because they give you an example of dividing out where you end up with 0, and that'll help tell you what number can go into both the top and the bottom. So this is one method if you have two very large numbers and you're looking to reduce them.